The market is too saturated. Listen, I hear this all the time, and I get it. When you look around the consulting space, it feels like everyone and their cousin is a consultant right now. Everyone has a framework, a methodology. Everyone's on LinkedIn with their profiles and are talking about the same things you're talking about. To be honest, that part is true. But here's what I've noticed when we say that the market is too saturated. What we're really saying is, I don't know how to stand out in a crowded space. And friend, that's a completely different problem. Because the issue isn't that there are too many consultants. We want more consultants in our space, especially when it comes to growing the industry and diversifying the industry. That's a good thing. But the issue that most of us are facing is not the fact that there are more people in our space, but it's that we are having the exact same conversations. We're saying the same things, we're positioning ourselves the same way. We are literally blending in and becoming background noise. That's the real problem. So the question isn't, what do I do about competitors in my space? It truly is, how do I stand out in a crowded market? And if we can answer that question, then everything changes. That's what this conversation is going to be about. I was grocery shopping last week, and I was thinking about how there are so many different products in the grocery store. How in the world do we end up with new things coming on the market every other day? And this struck me when I was walking down the cookie aisle. I have a sweet tooth, so I'm gonna be honest, I love my snacks. And when I was walking down the aisle, the one thing that I noticed is that there was so much to choose from. There were so many different brands. Every brand had maybe 2, 3, or more different flavors or types of their products to sell. And I was thinking, how in the world do cookie companies and their brands stand out? There are so many competitors, so many different choices. So when the customer walks down the aisle, they're likely going to buy one thing and everyone else will fail. Well, that's what we often think when it comes to our consulting businesses. And the reason this isn't true, similar to the cookie situation, is because every customer is different, just like every client is different. So when customers walk into that grocery store, they're going for their favorite flavor. Some people like chocolate chip cookies. Some people like lemon cookies, like me. Some people like specialty cookies that they only find in certain stores. The bottom line is that we all have different preferences. We all have different needs, and clients have those different needs as well, which is one of the reasons why the market is not overly saturated, especially if you can find a way to differentiate yourself. One of the things that we struggle with as consultants is believing that we need to stick to a script. And it is this belief that often causes us the biggest problems, especially as women and women of color in this space, because we are trying to sound like everybody else. We are trying to fit in. We've been trained to focus on being part of the crowd instead of standing out from the crowd. And when you are an entrepreneur and when you're building your business in the consulting space, especially in 2026, where there are so many people in the entrepreneurial space and online and building new things, then that is going to be an Achilles heel when it comes to your growth. So we don't want to do that. We have to reframe our thinking about how we are positioning ourselves in the market and how we're talking about our business, because what we have been doing in the past is causing us to blend in. So we need to do something else. And I know you're probably wondering, what in the world is that? Well, listen, we're going to learn a little bit from the cookie sales that I was just talking about. Then we're going to think about how we can stand out, even if there's so many other competitors on the market. So if we're having the same generic conversations and that's causing the problem, then it must mean that changing the conversation is part of the solution. Changing the conversation is actually going to change the competition. This is one of the reasons why remaining so generic in what we are offering and what we're talking about and what we're marketing That is causing a big problem, mainly because a lot of the very basic work that we used to do as consultants can be done easily by other means, whether that is through artificial intelligence or maybe through other services at a lower price point. There is not much benefit of trying to blend in and be another, well, I like to say me too selection. You have to think about how you can offer something that is different and that is unique to your industry and your space. And to be honest with you, as women, especially as women of color, that is something easy for us to do. There's so many conversations that I know I have wanted to have over the years, and I'm sure you have too, that are really important that allow people within our industry, our clients, to see things from a different perspective. And in all honesty, that different perspective, that different viewpoint is what they're looking for. For instance, going back to the whole conversation about the cookies, when you're walking down an aisle and you're looking for a snack, you don't want to eat the same thing over and over and over. You want to try something new. You want to try something different in order to satisfy that craving. And it's not that clients are out here trying to try different options just for the sake of trying it. But if they have tried or attempted to utilize a solution a number of times and it has not worked in their favor, then they are often seeking out a different way or a different method or a different approach. That is where we actually can find a lot of success, especially if you are a solo consultant or even part of a small firm. The goal is not to compete with a large, massive corporation. It is honestly to be very specialized in nuance so that you are speaking to one particular part of your industry that you can uniquely serve. And that is the beauty of having the flexibility when you are not responsible for large teams and others that require a lot more changes to systems and structure for you to implement those types of changes. We can be more flexible, we can be more adaptable, and that is actually a benefit. So now we have to begin to think about what we're saying and what we're doing that looks like everybody else. And that is often something we have to actually intentionally do because it is second nature from the way that we've been conditioned through our work and our careers to blend in. It is part of, I would say, the mold of being an employee to follow the instructions that you're given, to be in alignment with a particular mission or a goal. And so we are all used to having similar conversations for that reason. But now, as entrepreneurs, we have to break away from that. We have to start thinking about how can we begin to present our ideas, our thoughts, our methods in a way that stands out so that we begin to build the business around our intellectual property. That looks vastly different. And that's going to take a bit of intentional work because the conversations, once again, need to be different. So, how do we do that? One method that I have found to be extremely helpful over the years is drilling down into the LinkedIn profiles and bios of other consultants that may be in your space. And you're doing this not to copy anybody else, but what I want you to look for is the messaging. Read their about sections, read a little bit about their background. How are they positioning and presenting themselves? And take notice of what that sounds like. And I bet any amount of money that if you were to look at all of these bios and lay them next to each other side by side, you can likely interchange them and swap them in and out from person to person. And it wouldn't change a thing because they tend to read the same way. And once you realize that and you go back and you look at your own bio, or your own about section, whether it's on LinkedIn or your website or wherever you are marketing yourself, then you'll find that if it is similar, you're likely blending in. And that's one of the reasons why clients don't see you as being someone that they should follow or they should work with over somebody else. Because keep in mind that when clients are making the decision to hire a consultant, they are looking for someone who presents the least amount of risk. They tend to go with people that may be referrals because they are getting that name from a trusted source, or they're going with someone that has been in business for a long time because they see a track record that has been existing, or they're going with someone who may be of lower cost because they're spending less money and therefore it's less risky. Those are all of the things that they lean into, not because they don't find value in what you do or not because they don't feel as if you are the consultant that could do the job. You likely could, but for them, you pose too much of a risk for them to invest at that level. One thing that changes that and changes the conversation is offering something that's different because when they cannot easily interchange what you do with somebody else, then that opens the door to them understanding and learning more about you, what you offer, and then having more of a buy in that allows them to uh, value your services more because it is not seemingly the same as everyone else. That is a huge difference. And so, if you're recognizing that what you're saying is very similar to what others are also saying and conveying, I want to challenge you to think about ways in which you are different. And most often, this is rather easy for us to do. It's not that we don't know our differences, we're just not good at communicating and articulating those differences. So, when you look at those bios and profiles of your competition, I want you to start highlighting things that are different from the way you think or the way you work or the frameworks you use. When you begin to see and outline those differences, then you can speak to those differences when you're presenting yourself. The more you're able to draw that distinction and that difference, the easier it is for a client or a future client to understand why you are not like everybody else, why they should invest and work with you over the competition, because now they see you as offering something that is different, that they need, and that they can't get anywhere else. That is part of what we have to begin to do better. And this takes a little bit of time. It's not as if you are going to make one or two edits and everything is going to change overnight, although it could. But this is often about how do you begin to think about your work differently instead of falling back into the comfort of what is familiar. How can you push yourself to do or say the things that once felt uncomfortable? Because 9 times out of 10, that level of unease that you were feeling is the signal that you were tapping into something that would stand out. That may not be something that everyone agrees with, but that your ideal client and your ideal audience would resonate with. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking to connect with those who are willing to invest in your work, not to be an influencer, not to be liked by everyone, but to truly offer something that cannot easily be replicated. That's what allows us to not just stand out right now, but to also shield and protect ourselves from the growth of artificial intelligence and all these other tools in our market space. We have to start thinking about what is not easily replicated. There are a lot of ways to do that, but the easiest way is to tap into your lived experience. Why? Because we are all different. Every last one of us has our unique lived experience that is almost like or just like a fingerprint. It is something that is unique to you. And when you have figured out how to tie that into the work that you do, so that you are approaching that work from that viewpoint, that is what is going to be the biggest differentiator for you in your market. We have to first recognize how we are blending in. Then, after we recognize how we're blending in, we can create conversations that begin to tap into our unique lived experiences and the things that we've learned and the way that we see our industry, the way that we view how things should move forward, how we should innovate, how we should grow, how we should develop. All of those things become new conversations that put you into a different category. And what we're doing is really an aspect of category building. You want to be different and not the same. That is going to help stand out when it comes to being in a very noisy market. What remains true is that consulting remains an industry that is valued at over $400 billion, like billion with a B, even in 2026 moving forward. So there is a lot of money out there, a lot of space for us to be able to build businesses that will succeed even in this crowded and what people say is a saturated market. It's about finding your space to create something that is unique to you. I want you to lean into that. I want you to think about who you are most equipped to serve, what you are drawn to, what are you qualified to do. And I think when you begin to get comfortable with narrowing down and focusing your work and your efforts, that is going to be the first start to you finding the growth and the sustainability that you desire. Because the generality, remaining very generic, is hindering your growth. And the minute that we can break away from that, is going to be a lot easier to stand out. And then we once again shift the landscape altogether because we're not worried about how many people are in our market, how many people are in the industry. We're focused more so on what conversations are being had. And in all honesty, right now, there are only a few conversations in most cases. So you have the ability to be a conversation starter. Being that conversation starter is the goal. Part of doing that is recognizing how you're different, valuing how you're different, acknowledging how you're different, and then building around that. So, I hope this episode helps you to feel a little bit more calm and reassured that there is more than enough space for you in the consulting industry. There is more than enough money available to help sustain and grow a very successful and thriving business. So, do this exercise today. Don't forget, look at those LinkedIn profiles and bios, go on a few websites, read what your competition is putting out there. See how similar it is to what you're saying, and then find ways for you to address some of the differences that you notice between how they are presenting themselves and what you actually believe. Because if you do that, you will be ahead of so many others who are not willing to do the work. So if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it with your friends. I love having these conversations with you, and we're going to continue to talk about how we actually do these things to stand out and succeed because we're in a new space. It is a new age of consulting, so we have to break away from what we have been traditionally doing, and that starts with having a different message and having a different conversation. So we're going to keep doing that here. I invite you to come back, tune in, keep this conversation going with me. And until then, take care.